All right, you guys. So I just wanted to put together a basic video here to show you some simple principles for composing music. A lot of you are new to composing music, but you find obviously the idea of writing a paper less appealing. Writing music is a good option, and we will, going forward, have other assignments for composing that hopefully this will help you be better at it and not stress about it as much. Um, I hope you're doing well in general. I hope your other classes are doing okay. Obviously, this is a challenge for everyone, so I hope you're bearing with your teachers as they try and adjust to this. I know that I have been incredibly frustrated with trying to figure stuff out, like having to reinvent and learn all sorts of new stuff has been really hard. So, but anyways, so I have a list here of some basic principles. The first one is probably the most important, and it's finding a principal concept or musical idea and using it over and over in different ways. Okay. So the most simple example of this is theme, right? Themes repeating, but also just little rhythmic fragments can happen, or rhythmic patterns, or melodic patterns, or again, harmonic progression. So, but if we start with themes, this is kind of one of the classic ways of organizing music. You come up with a simple idea, you use it as much as possible in different ways to keep it interesting. When I think about a good example, I think of like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. You have this classic theme, and it just repeats. I mean, if you could sit down and count how many times that happens in that movement, it might be, I would guess, in the 200 to 300 times that you hear that theme in some form in that piece. So it's constant, and you should really think about doing the same thing. Come up with a simple idea and use it over and over. When I had a composition teacher, we often talked about this being your seed. It's the seed of your ideas, and you're going to grow it into a tree, which is the piece. Okay. So rhythmic patterns can function the same way. They can just be repetitions or repeats of something that kind of help make the material, kind of cohesive because you're hearing the same patterns. And then another is the harmonic progression. Actually, Stacy did a great example of this in her project where she basically used what's called a theme and variation. You have the same harmonic progression over and over with a different melodic material over top of that. And so the harmonic material becomes the repeated pattern, and then the melody changes over it. Okay? So number 2 here is to do not repeat something more than 3 times without variation. This is a really interesting concept. This relates a lot to just human psyche and human interpretation of sound and time, in that we love to hear things that are new, but we don't want them to be too new. So it's interesting that I'm asking you to use something over and over, right? Use your melody over and over. But then I'm also saying don't use it over and over too much exactly the same, right? And that's what someone like Mozart or Beethoven are so good at, is taking a theme and changing its key or changing its rhythm a little bit or adding grace notes or doing this, all these little things to change and make variation. Yeah. I'm also always struggling with this in my electronic music classes where kids want to repeat bass lines and drum beats for 5 minutes, and it's just boring, right? You've got to have some variation, even in when things are similar or repeating. There should be variation. Number 3 is to don't use simple but effective forms like rondo and ABA, right? So ABA is probably going to be your best bet here because your projects are short. So, write some music. That's the main theme. Then have something contrasting in the middle, and then come back to that theme and with something different at the end, right? With some variation of the A section at the end. Rondo might be a stretch in this project because it's kind of longer, but you could possibly do it. The number 4 is to not stress too much at the beginning about writing something good, right? Just start working. So this is a problem I have all the time too. You write stuff and you don't like it. You write something else, you don't like it. You start over and over, and you're trying to write that Grammy award winning song, and it's just not going to happen, first of all. So just don't worry about it. Yeah, you're new to composing. Just explore sound and enjoy yourself. And usually you do better by just letting go of this I have to write good music problem. Okay. um, Number 5 is that this is a great one too, really important, I think. Ideas that seem clear to you are way less clear to listeners and need to be explicit. So what I mean here is that you may think that a melody is obviously the melody, but to a listener it may not be obviously the melody because there's other things going on and it's not clear. So what I'm saying is that if you think something sounds like the melody, then it should be explicitly the melody, right? It should be in the highest register. It should be the loudest instrument. It should have the most movement, while other parts are clearly accompaniment underneath it. So if you think something is clear, it probably still could be clarified, right? And another good example of this is using form. So you may think, and this is what I wrote right underneath here, right? You may think that the difference between A and B is significantly contrasting enough, but for a listener, that contrast will always seem less to them, right? So, you listen to us. So the idea is if you're going from the verse to a chorus, for example, in a popular song, what can I do to make the contrast between them stronger so that it's more obvious to the listener? Even though to me it seems obvious, it's probably not to a listener. It's less obvious. So, because remember, listeners are hearing something for the first time. You might compose something and listen to it 40 times first, right? So you're like, oh, this is perfectly clear, but it's not that clear to a listener who's hearing it once. And also, that's again where repetition helps, right? If I sing a melody 40 times, that's probably enough to make someone remember that melody. But if I play it only twice, it's not going to be remembered. Yeah. All right. And the last one here is number 6, using drones and pedal tones, or drones, which are called pedal tones, and ostinato, which are repeated rhythmic patterns, to create a continuous and consistent bass for which to glue your other ideas onto. So this is a great idea because you end up with music that has something that's kind of always in the background, right? So that way there's never silence and there's always something in motion that then you can play your melodies with and add stuff on top of, and that can be really useful, okay? So anyways, as an example of this first one though, which is the most important, the idea of reusing materials, I took this from, well, let me talk about this real quickly. So this is something I learned from a professor of mine, is the idea of economizing your work, right? The principle of economy. Continuously use and reuse materials for effective delivery of your principal ideas, okay? So again, this makes, the Beethoven is a perfect example. If I want a certain melody to be remembered, then I better play it 40, 50 times in the course of 5 minutes, 20 minutes, right? Otherwise, they're not going to remember. You may think it's memorable after hearing it twice, but you wrote it. And so that's not going to be the case for a listener. And it needs to be more obvious and more consistently repetitive, but with variation, right? Okay? So a good example, I pulled this example from Bach. This is from the Bach Inventions number 13, and it's in A minor, and it has this classic melody. Okay, so, and let's just listen actually to this example. I have an example, I have a recording here. Let's just play this. Oops. Let me rewind that, start from the beginning. Okay, so really great tune. That's one of my favorite inventions. So, but anyways, this melody, this opening melody comes back over and over, right? And if we actually look at this piece in the first page, which is actually these 12 measures, if I look at them, you can see that there's actually just two ideas principally, and they get repeated incessantly. So the main theme, which is here in the blue box, in the first two measures is repeated 4 times. And then the second idea, which is this kind of arpeggiated harmony, basically, is repeated 4 times in the second measure and third measure and fourth measure, right? And then down here we get kind of a little bit of a truncated version of that same idea. And then we go right back to the A idea, right? The main theme, okay? If we go to the next one, here we see, again, the main theme repeated again and again and again. And then the B theme, or it's not really a theme, it's like the secondary idea, which is really in a sequence, actually, comes in here, right? And then there's all sorts of stuff in the middle, and then we kind of return to the A idea at the end of the piece. So this piece is really an ABA form with some variation. But, the point of this is in the first 12 bars of this piece, which is not very much, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 instances of the first idea, the main theme. And then the secondary theme, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 versions of that one, right? Or repetitions. So there's just constant repetition. I mean, there's even more if you want to look at the other melody, right? This little bit here comes back right here, right? This little bit here is also the same thing. I mean, it's really because this is all a sequence, okay? But it's repeating incessantly, okay? So, use these ideas when you're composing. I mean, I really want you to think about kind of repeating ideas and creating something that's contrasting, right? Or not contrasting, I'm sorry, something that is cohesive as a musical unit with this repetition, okay? All right, that's all. Good luck.